Everything you're about to see on this video is a combination of my 40 years of study of the published literature, as well as 30 years worth of patient contact as a colorectal surgeon. I'm not here to diagnose or treat anyone. I'm here for educational purposes only because no manner of brains is worth a good set of bells. Hey, it's Dr. Toker, your friendly neighborhood colorectal surgeon, and I am on a mission to educate the world in terms of gut health and the microbiome and how that impacts your daily life. I certainly hope you will join me on this journey, but you're going to have to buckle up, Buttercup. We're talking gut stuff. And wakey, wakey, eggs and bakey. It's Dr. Toker, and it must be Thursday morning because it is the crack-o dawn, as we like to say, the butt crack of dawn in my line of work. We got an interesting topic today, and I know it's a little bit unique for an intestinal doctor to talk about neurologic issues, but your brain is your primary control system of your entire body, and so you do have to understand that in order to understand gut health. And many of us struggle with our gut health because our brains are out of whack. We've gone all wackadoodles. So we want to talk about how to redefine our neurologic status quo. And so in the world of medicine, the term for the status quo is what we call allostasis. Allostasis. So we've talked in the past about homeostasis, and that's where you reach a balance, right? Got a balance. This broadcast is brought to you by Super Patch Company, and of course they specialize in allowing your neurologic system to achieve homeostasis, which is a normalizing balance. Now, that normal balance that you're going to achieve with the super patch is amongst average neurologic wavelengths as measured from a database of a large number of patients. So it's kind of like the human average. That's the homeostasis that these patches will place you in. Now, your current balance is kind of a new normal. It's called allostasis. It's where your brain kind of gives up with all the shenanigans and reaches a quote unquote balance for it, but that balance is not normal compared to the rest of the population, right? So somebody who has chronic pain, their pain pathway is way out of balance compared to someone who is not in chronic pain. But that has become your status quo, your allostasis. And so that is what we're hoping to redefine. Let's get you back into balance compared to the rest of your study group, so to speak, the rest of the group. Oh, I stopped sharing. You know, it's always something technical with me. If you're watching on Spotify, well, you probably cannot see that I'm screwing this up. And hopefully you guys can now see my slides. Are my slides back? They are. Okay, cool. All right, so you are out of whack. You want to get back into whack, wherever whack may be. Okay, so that's today's conversation. How did your brain get out of whack? How do we get you back into whack? And what does that mean for you overall? And so here's the series of events. And if you can't see the font on these slides, all of these slides are available as a downloadable PDF. If you're listening on Spotify or a podcast channel of some sort, then you can always go to our website, dranatoker.com, and find the services area, I believe, and you'll see podcasts, and then you can download those PDFs. Okay. So, first of all, you need to know your brain is the primary control of all organ systems. Okay. And this is like from your ability to breathe, your heart to beat, your blood pressure, pancreatic function, digestive function, liver function, your immune function, your psychological function, your cognitive function. All of these things are controlled by your brain. And it has to constantly adjust to changes. So, for example, if you're accustomed to sleeping in a dark room, well, that would be normal. But let's say you move to a dorm room. Both my kids are off to college. Okay, they're going from living in a field with no neighbors where it's dark outside to now a dorm room crowded with people, with noise, with ambient light, ambient sound. Eventually, they will get used to it. Okay, so your brain is constantly having to adjust. But that change can actually lead to a sleep disturbance that then becomes a permanent disturbance in them. So if you've got a permanent disturbance, this is what's happened to you. Your brain was in control. It had to manage certain changes that became so constant and unrelenting that your brain just sort of reset to an ability to manage that. Now, this permanent new normal can be sort of set in stone, so to speak. Not really, we can change it back, but gets more likely to become a new set point in the face of stress. So, this concept of allostasis, getting out of whack, so to speak. If you are under stress, that out of whackness occurs quicker. If you have a deficiency of neurotransmitters, now that neurotransmitters come from your microbiome. So if your microbiome is in disorder, you have gut dysfunction, then the brain out of whack thing, again, allostasis becomes more prominent. Now, the first system to go seems to be blood sugar control, blood pressure, and then thyroid. And then all of the other systems sort of fall after that. So many of you, if you're on a health journey, you'll kind of recognize you've put on some weight that you didn't want to. That's indicative of your blood sugar being out of control, by the way, just so you know. Okay. And then, there goes the blood pressure a little bit. And then if you're like me, you're diagnosed with a thyroid problem. You're thinking, why don't I even have a thyroid? But that doesn't even make sense. Right. So all of these things sort of fall in line. Next thing you know, you start getting inflammatory things. Your cholesterol goes up. The weight situation gets worse. Your joints get inflamed. You start having stress situations, can't sleep, anxiety issues, focus issues, cognitive memory issues. It becomes a slippery slope, and your brain is trying to juggle all these things and can't. And at some point, it hits these set points, and just to allow it to focus on other more important things, if that sort of makes sense. Now, the good news is, it has been demonstrated that even things that are out of whack, you can get them back into whack, provided that you do a few things, okay? And so this is one of the reasons why I thought it was interesting in regards to Super Patch, and we'll present it today in this format instead of a bunch of little short videos on Instagram as I would normally do, because this is the perfect opportunity for like when you've been so out of whack, you can't find your way back to whack. So this is how Super Patch can help you, because that is like whack paradise. Does that make sense? Like you don't even know what a lack of anxiety and stress is until you put on one of these patches, and then all of a sudden your brain sees its baseline set point. Oh, that's where my set point is supposed to be. Now, the second you take off the patch, you've lost your set point because you haven't reset there. You're going to have to do some stuff. It takes more than a patch. So that's what we're going to learn today. These super patches, again, I liken these things to crutches for someone who has injured themselves, or a brace. Okay, they're here to support you while your body heals the joint and learns how to walk again. So that's kind of what we're doing. You're out of whack. Let's find ourselves back into whack, shall we? So, premise number one, your brain controls everything. Okay. The autonomic nervous system controls all systems. Every cell in your body has like a little nerve tendril sticking off of it. So your brain actually can control down to a cellular level. The autonomic system will coordinate through the brain to the rest of your body. Okay. So when your adrenal gland spits out some adrenaline, well, that signal is going to go up to your brain. Your brain is going to go down to it to regulate the adrenaline and the cortisol. But then your brain then has to tell your body all the other stuff it needs to do. Yes, the adrenaline will have its end organ manifestations. The cortisol will have its end organ manifestations. But your brain works quicker than that. It's kind of like, how is it you touch a hot plate and you can remove your finger before you can say, ouch, right? Because your brain is involved. All right. So the brain is involved, not just these end organ. This is probably a good time for me, just for 2 seconds, to segue. And I don't know if I have a slide coming up on this topic, so I'm going to say it now. And if I do, I'll skip over it. But one of the problems that we have in modern medicine, and not just Western allopathic medicine, but in holistic medicine, naturopathic medicine, functional medicine, herbalists, Eastern medicine, we are all very reactive because that is a human response. We wait for the disease to occur because that's all we can do. We tell you to eat healthy. We wait till a symptom shows up. Boom, we throw some intervention at you when a symptom appears. Okay, that is a problem with all forms of human endeavor. It's very reactive. We're almost childlike in our proactive abilities because we really don't know. Every human being is so different. I could tell you to eat a high vegetable or even vegetarian, Mediterranean style vegetarian diet. And there are some people who cannot tolerate that. They cannot eat fruits or vegetables. Nod if you know what I'm talking about. A lot of those people get belly bloat and abdominal pain and IBS symptoms from fruits and veggies. Now that is their new normal. They are out of whack because that is abnormal. That's not a normal state. That's an abnormal state. But what I'm saying is blanket advice is never good enough, which is why I have a disclaimer now on my videos. None of what I'm going to tell you replaces your doctor because every individual is so different. I'm giving nutritional information that is good for the benefit of all. Take bits and pieces of it as you will. If the advice is not helping, your out of whack new normal may be so abnormal that regular advice doesn't help, if that makes sense. My goal in life is to find a means by which, and believe me, it will happen in my lifetime, a means by which we can find the patient before they become the patient. Because the reality is, on an EEG, disease symptoms are showing up before the patient has a symptom. I just read a very long paper that describes that. They had 500 or 600 references. It's a 60-page paper, but it is interesting because they're picking up on EEG changes on patients who do not yet have the physiologic change. And it's this change that is sort of starting to force into the new normal. Once the physiology follows the neurology, now you're diabetic. Now you're hypertensive. Now you're overweight. Now you have an autoimmune disease. So we want to find you before that happens. There's going to be a way to do it at some point in time. The key is absolutely positively, without any doubt in my mind right now, as I sit here, as someone who reads the literature all the time. I know it's an odd habit, but I'm forever looking things up. It's going to lie somewhere between your brain and the microbiome. This gut brain axis is going to be the answer, not to just how to fix a problem, but to how to diagnose it and intervene before you actually have a tissue end organ manifestation. We need to get out of the mindset of treating the end organ. All this conversation about insulin, for example, and we've done a blood sugar talk. I will probably repeat a blood sugar talk in a different way. But everyone puts so much focus on insulin. Insulin is an end organ hormone that then has its end organ responses. Food doesn't hit the pancreas and insulin first. It has to go through steps before you get to insulin. It just happens to be the first endocrine molecule related to blood sugar that we found. And there are so many others. And so we have to get out of the mindset that, oh, if we just fix insulin, our lives are different. Well, that is not true. You have to fix what caused the insulin in the first place. Right? So, and it's a lot more complex than you can put in a 30-second reel or TikTok or video. And it is always interesting to me when I have, a 2.5 minute, I had a 2.5 minute video. It was popular. A lot of people saw it. Hundreds of thousands of people were commenting and asking me questions about it. It's on kiwi fruit and how it helps you. And one of the comments was literally, this video is too long. Can't you just tell us to eat kiwi and move on? Like, no, actually, because that would be this is your one answer. And that would lead the whole world to have the false illusion that every problem they have centers on this one problem. And that's not actually how it works. Okay, sermon over. Okay. Anywho's, the brain cortex is going to be responsible for, so the autonomic nervous system, the prefrontal cortex, all of these things are going to be responsible for coordinating all aspects of your life. So too much or too little of any substance is going to shift your status quo, right? So the patient, back to blood sugar, the patient who is consuming carbohydrates all the time, high amounts of carbohydrates. Your body doesn't like high amounts of carbohydrates all the time. It doesn't like that. So the peripheral cells in your body will decrease the number of carbohydrate receptors that there are. Carbohydrate receptors are on all the cells in your body. When there's not a lot of carbohydrates around, there's a lot of those receptors out because they're fishing. They want the carbohydrate. If there's too much carbohydrate around, the receptors downgrade. They don't need any of that. The second that downgrade happens, you become insulin resistant, right? Too much sugar changes your status quo. And now your resting blood sugar, instead of being 90 to 100, is now 140 to 150. Chronic high blood sugar has done that to you. Now, it takes a long time for that to happen. Okay, so not to fear. Chronic stress, cortisol and adrenaline, doing the same thing. Omega-6 fatty acids. This is critical, and I am about to do, I will record. It'll be one of these week-long, maybe even 2-week-long, depending on how many segments I get to. The dangers in modern life about omega-6 fatty acids. This is why I insist or stress or highly suggest staying away from all grains and seed oils because they are pure omega-6 fatty acids with no omega-3 fatty acid balancing you. We feed all our animals grains. There's no omega-3s in that anymore. We farm raise our fish. There's no omega-3s in that anymore. And so when you're missing omega-3s, you've got too much omega-6s, now all of a sudden you're out of whack. And the new normal becomes obesity, inflammation, high blood pressure, diabetes, et cetera, et cetera. The same is true for toxins, for heavy metals. The same is true for neurotransmitters, much of which comes from your microbiome. So chronic gut problems, chronic microbiome problems are going to throw your brain out of whack, right? So these 8 things are 8 hot topics. And if you were to watch social media, you would think maybe it's just the seed oils. Maybe it's just my blood sugar. Maybe it is just stress. The reality is any one of them can throw you out of whack. And the second one of them's out of whack, it's so easy for all the other ones to get out of whack also. And if you're out of whack long enough, now you can't even find whack. Now, I am summarily convinced, if you compare humanity from 100 years ago, there were a couple things that are different, more than a couple things that are different. Number one, life was not 24/7, right? Watching the news since September 11th, 2001 is so different than it was on September 10th, 2001. We all know this. Well, I mean, if you're young, you don't know this, right? It went from just watching the news to now there's like the person talking, headlines over here, the Chiron scrolling across the bottom. That is too much. It's too much. It's overload, right? This chronic stress that anything can happen at any moment. Turning the news from a 30-minute episode at 5 p.m. when you got home from work, or 6 p.m., the 6 o'clock news, I guess it used to be. 6 p.m. news was the headline news, right? That was the prime local news. Everyone came home. There were 3 channels. You chose the one channel that you liked. My next door neighbor was the weather guy for one of the channels. So that was the news we watched. So we could watch Mr. Gendron next door on the TV, right? It's just what we did. So, right, that was your news. You got your 30-minute news. That's it. When that news was over, you watched the Wheel of Fortune, or some game show, and then you watch your 7 o'clock lineup of whatever show it is that you want. There was no stress. That was the schedule. Okay, so now it's 24/7. It's on demand. It's high pressure. And this kind of stress, your brain cannot differentiate between that and, let's say, Attila the Hun is coming to capture your village. Your brain doesn't know this difference. So there is a constant cortisol rush that is going through your body at all times, cortisol and adrenaline. These 2 things change your microbiome, which means a change in neurotransmitters, which means that can permanently alter your frontal cortex. And if you don't know what your frontal cortex is, that's the part of your body that is responsible for logical thought and decision making. This process leads to very poor decision making, first of all. Secondly, leads to premature aging. It also leads to impulsivity and difficulty controlling emotional outbursts. Watch the nightly news. Watch these viral videos of people acting like lunatics. What is going on? I'll tell you what's going on. It's chronic stress, especially in young people. The frontal part of your brain doesn't fully develop until you're 25, 26 years old. So when you're under the age of 25 and you're being exposed to constant stressors, food that is poisoning your microbiome, you're going to struggle making very poor decisions, impulse outbursts. And of course, it's very hard for someone in that age category. They're trying to exert themselves professionally. They're trying to earn a living. It's hard to do when it's not clicking. And it's not, part of why it's not clicking is going to be the stress situation. And so I think one of my call is as my children leave my home and I'm trying to launch them into adulthood, I take this more and more seriously. And the way to explain it to society, it will take quite a bit of education. It's one of the reasons why I insist on spending this kind of time once a week to describe the different aspects of modern life that are leading to this problem. Now, system failures, and we kind of touched on those. This font is very small. I know you probably cannot see it. But basically, the system failure, when you go out of whack, starts with the microbiome, then hits the blood sugar, then hits the blood pressure, then hits your thyroid. Ultimately, it's going to hit your cognition. Okay, so now here's the good news. What goes out of whack can truly get back into whack. This is the beauty of the way God made you, the plasticity of your brain. It's looking for its baseline touch point. It just has lost touch of that. It may have been many, many years since you saw it last, right? It's probably been 30 years. I started medical school 31 years ago. It was stressful getting into medical school. So I probably haven't seen my baseline whack in 35 years. For some of you, it's been longer than that. But you can do it, okay? You need to, there's a couple things, right? So this is what I wanted to highlight in this. If you can improve your microbiome, if you can stop the inflammatory response in your gut, and if you can blunt the stress response, then your brain has a very good chance of finding its new normal. And this is one of the reasons I find these super patches so incredibly important, because they are the Control Alt Delete, get you back to factory reset normal. That normal is just sort of based on a database of normal brains, normal people with no symptoms. And so that's a factory reset, for lack of better words. Okay. The microbiome. So we're going to try to reset our microbiome. We'll do lectures on that in my Instagram feed. I've been yammering for a year on a variety of different topics. And so we hit on microbiome from time to time. I will do another series of those coming up. As well, including the neurotransmitters. But just know the microbiome creates serotonin, it creates dopamine, it creates GABA, GABA, which is one of those neurotransmitters helpful in sleep. Your microbiome will feed you these neurotransmitters based on what you personally are eating and your level of cortisol and adrenaline. So if your parasympathetic system is leading the charge instead of your sympathetic, so if your rest and digest side of you is in charge as opposed to your stress, fight or flight, then your microbiome is more likely to provide for you the GABA you need, the dopamine you need, the serotonin you need. When you eat processed food, you'll get a rush of serotonin. It's one of the reasons after you break up with your boyfriend, you want a gallon of Haagen-Dazs. They don't make gallons. Do they make gallons in Haagen? I don't think they do. But you'll eat the whole little container, right? You're looking for that serotonin, that there, Anna, it's all okay. That's coming from the food that you just ate, not because your blood sugar got back to normal, but because your microbiome is feeding you serotonin. Okay? So the key concept is, how do I normalize my serotonin without eating junk food all the time? Well, you can do it. Your body really is looking for something called a prebiotic fiber or inulin. Okay? If you feed your microbiome this inulin, you will do two things. The first is harmful bacteria are not big fans of inulin. They don't get the bang for the buck out of inulin, I mean, they want glucose, right? They want bread, these things that are just rich carbohydrate sources. Inulin is a carbohydrate. They just can't get as much energy from it. Well, the bacteria that are helpful for you, like the inulin, okay, they're not as quick to the uptake on the other forms, right? So inulin helps diversify the microbiome of helpful bacteria, number one. And number two, those bacteria then turn that inulin into something called a short chain fatty acid. There's two of them, butyrate and propionate. Your body wants both of them. One of them helps stabilize inflammation of the intestinal lining itself, and the other one helps stabilize inflammation in the liver. So you want inulin, and you want a diversity of the microbiome. Probably a good time to remind you, if you don't know how to do that, like what is she even talking about? You can always go to my website, drannatoker.com, go to products I love. You'll see something called Viome, Viome. That is a microbiome testing site. They have a little app that makes it easy for you to figure out how to diversify your microbiome, get it all back in balance. If you use Dr. Toker as your checkout, they'll give you $100, sometimes $110 off the purchase. So save some money and then educate yourself. How do I diversify my microbiome? Okay, it's a complex topic, but they will walk you through it, give you a little app, send you the little test. You poopy, you send it off. It's a poopy test. You get the answer, okay? Now, gut inflammation. This is critical. Gut inflammation leads to a protein your body naturally will make. This protein does not come from bacteria, it does not come from your food. You haven't ingested it. It's called zonulin. Not 100% sure why your body makes this, but it's very similar to cholera toxin. That's how it gets its name, zonulin. I know that sounds like Romulan and all of these other, I know it sounds like Star Trek. And it's confusing. All these names. Stop with the names. But just know, this protein is damaging to your body in high quantities. It's there for a reason. One assumes in small quantities it's important, but in high quantities, it's very damaging. When it hits the lining of your intestinal tract, it separates the cells that are tightly bound together. That separation leads to leaky gut. Now, when the zonulin goes away, those cells reconnect and become waterproof again. When the zonulin's there, they separate, no longer waterproof, you got the leaky gut. This leaky gut process is what sets up further inflammation. Now, the more inflammation there is, the more zonulin you make, right? It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, so to speak. It doesn't happen spontaneously. The number one stimulant to zonulin is called gluten. This is why if you've got any medical illness, if you want to improve your health, if you want to lose weight, even if you don't perceive that you have a gluten problem, you need to be gluten-free. Or you cannot get rid of the inflammation in your intestinal tract until you've done so. It's not forever, right? If you can get rid of all of the inflammation in your intestinal tract, if you can get your body back into whack, this is a process that can take 6 months to a year. Then you can gradually reintroduce fermented grain type things back into your life, like homemade sourdough, not the stuff you buy at the store, but something made by a real bakery or in your home, made with not American grown and manufactured flour, but European, preferably einkorn. Like, we're getting specific now. And it's only because of the way they grow the wheat in the modern era. And then if you limit that to twice a week, you could probably get back to where you're having wheat in the fermented form and your body can manage the amount of zonulin that creates. Because trust me, the zonulin's happening. Okay. So I tell people, look, if you can avoid gluten at a baseline, do it. If you can avoid all grains if possible, then do it. Um, you should also be avoiding artificial sweeteners, colors, and additives. You should avoid any animal that has been fed grain. So not only are you avoiding grain, you need to avoid animals who have been fed grain. And I will explain that in a different series of videos because it's a complex topic. And then you need to avoid seed oils. Okay. And that's a complex topic as well. It goes in with the grain fed animals, and I will explain one day. But there's a reason I suggest doing it. And I know in the comments, I don't answer as many comments as I used to, mainly because I don't want people to perceive that I'm giving medical advice through an Instagram feed because I do not want to do that. So I am curtailing how many comment. Please don't keep asking in the comments what happens if I do. I promise you, stay tuned. This is going to be like one of those season finale cliffhangers, like when Yellowstone has a cliffhanger and like you have to wait to the next season and it's killing you. Okay, that's the cliffhanger I'm leaving. And I'm not going to answer that question because it's very complex. I will, however, in a format like this where we have time to chit chat. Okay, back to a super patch and why I love them. This is whack. This is whack paradise. Not crack is whack, but super patch. Get your brain back into this normal pattern that it's missing for so long that it doesn't even know how to find it. You're a lost little sheep, and the shepherd has to find you. And so these patches are a way to do that. Okay? This peace patch helps set your hypothalamic pituitary adrenal gland axis back into a normal. Now, that doesn't mean you should be blowing and going all day long. I mean, you're going to have to do some behavioral things as well. But if you're taking the time to do the exercise, to get your sleep, to spend some downtime, phone off, not watching the Instagram, not watching news. I stopped watching news probably during the pandemic. I stopped watching it. It's too stressful. So I just stopped watching it. You'd be shocked how that helps. I don't really do the social media thing, oddly enough. I know because I've got a channel that I post to. I kind of pay attention to what people are asking me. I'll venture off the grid. If someone says, hey, did you see what so-and-so posted? I'll go off the grid and find that person, maybe follow them so I can see what they're saying. But I don't do a lot of really stressful social media because I'm trying to find my baseline again. And so the little stress patch helps me, right? It calms all that adrenal axis down. And then I'm doing my part with the schedule thing, right? That's step one. The second is vagal nerve. You got to get your vagal nerve back into normalcy. The vagal nerve is not only what controls the gut, but it is the conduit through which neurotransmitters travel from your gut to your brain. You want that vagal nerve in sort of happy firing category. I want it primed so that I am grain free. I'm eating clean, grass fed. I disappoint myself every time I do a deep dive on what my favorite foods are. Every time I think I've hit the holy grail. This is grain free. It is gluten free. It is organic. Oh my goodness. It's the greatest. And then I'll start doing research on it. Oh my goodness. Only to find that has been tested and there's more toxins in that than everything else. Very disappointing. So I'm trying to do the diet thing as many of you are. Keep trying. I've come to the conclusion that a God-made potato, if I can find an organic, made by God potato, that and my grass-fed beef or my free-range chicken or my wild-caught fish, those things combined and go to the farmer's market fruits and veggies that are in season, right? That I think that's gonna have to be dinner. Like, gone are the days where I can just crack open noodles and we're having spaghetti tonight. I mean, I know how to make noodles. I just haven't perfected the grain-free noodle that doesn't fall apart when you boil it, right? And I think that's the processing. My daughter made sweet potato gnocchi the other day. It was delish. So I think that's a potato kind of pasta that was it was grain-free. It literally was sweet potatoes, and I think I want to say it had some almond flour, maybe some cassava flour. I think some kind of root flour in it. It was delish. It did not take her that long to whip it out, so to speak. Longer than opening a package. I get it. But I think if you made those ahead of time and then vacuum seal them, I think, do you see what I'm saying? We're all I am on a mission to figure out what's making us sick, cracking into that Rubik's Cube, and then disseminating how I did it. That way we can all do the same thing and get out of this mess. The end cannot be, oh, your blood sugar's up, so you need to take this herb that's going to lower your blood sugar. And I am working on an herbal supplement that will do just that. Oh, it works. I cannot wait to share that with y'all. It absolutely works. It is not a medicine, doesn't require a prescription. And if you're not a diabetic and you eat something and that tends to drive up your blood sugar, this will tend to help your body naturally control it. And if you did that and a good diet at the same time, your blood sugar would be nicely controlled and that would help things. It stimulates intestinal health, which is why, what's wrong? What?
Look at his face.
I know is it swollen?
Yeah.
Why? What did he get?
He ate a wasp.
Oh, my puppy just ate a wasp. I am recording a podcast though.
No, I know.
So now the world knows. You want to show the world the puppy swollen face?
Sure.
Aw. Here, I'll show you. Does everyone want to see? This is Gaston, our puppy. He ate a wasp. Can he breathe? Is he breathing okay?
Yeah, he's doing fine.
Okay.
His face is just fat.
I will help you because we're going to give him some antihistamine. Please take him. And then I'll talk to the masses and finish up. Okay, so anyways, poor puppy. Now, no healthy diet was ever going to fix that puppy. Do you understand? Right? You're never going to get rid of medicine altogether. There's always going to be a trauma, an emergency, a reaction. There's always going to be a role for an operation. There's always going to be a role for medicine. If we are doctors, we should not fear a healthy population. We should encourage it. And that way, when people come to us, we can help them get better. I'm a firm believer in super patches. Even as a physician, doesn't require a prescription. This is the perfect additive to my practice. Hey, listen, add this into your life. Let's see if we can prevent illness before it occurs. This is my mission in life, and I'm glad that you guys are willing to sit through these long lectures and listen to the ramblings of what's becoming quickly a crazy woman. But I believe we are on to something. Your brain is going to tell us you're sick long before we know it. I close my eyes and I envision a world where your doctor has a very easy to apply EEG device with artificial intelligence algorithm that can spit out which one of your pathways is wackadoodles, and then offer a diet, an herbal supplement, an intervention, a behavior before it even gets to the symptom and now the need for the medicine. This is what I envision. No expensive equipment, no 4-month wait time for a surgeon or an MRI or any of these complex, very limited resources that are very expensive. Let's start the process at a kiosk in a Walgreens, like a blood pressure. Except instead of waiting for your blood pressure to elevate, surely that someone is going to come up with it. And now that I've made it a public idea, I don't know if I can patent it. It is now in the public purview, but maybe, maybe I have rights to that patent for throwing that idea out there. But I think it's going to happen, and I think it'll happen within our lifetimes because I know people who personally have all the equipment and are personally looking for the algorithm. So I know it's going to happen at some point in time, and I cannot wait until that is the case because I think that is going to be the Star Trek world, back to Star Trek and medicine, you know? But instead of scanning your body looking for a symptom, a physiologic problem that's out of whack, we need to be looking for a CNS problem that's out of whack because that brain knows. It knows before you do. And so that's why I'm a proponent of these super patches. Let's get those neurologic systems back to factory reset baseline. And really, no matter what your symptom is, let's crawl that back to factory reset. This company has, if you've got depression, they've got one called Joy. If you've got ADD, they've got one called Focus. If you've got anxiety or stress, they've got the Peace Patch. If you're an athlete, they've got one called Victory that improves your athletic ability, shockingly. Improves your agility, your speed, your workforce. We're going to do a lecture on that in the next 1 to 2 weeks. For men, it's called the Rocket Patch. It helps men's health, not just the ED aspect of it, but maybe tickling in on the low testosterone epidemic we're having. And I don't know, they have not yet done a study on sperm count, but we're probably going to do a men's health talk coming up in the next couple of weeks as well, because I think the men get ignored. And that's one of the problems in our society. We ignore our men, and I love our men, and my husband in particular. And so we're going to do a lecture dedicated to them. And we will work in how super patch, by virtue of neurologic pathways reaching a homeostasis, can help you get back to factory reset. And then your homework is to work on what led your brain off the reservation in the first place. Because you can't keep doing the same old stuff and not expect your brain to chase the old route. You gotta wheel it back in. Okay, lecture over. Hope you guys have a good morning. And that was Gaston, by the way, my little puppy. God bless him. Did you see his face, how swollen it was? Oh, yeah. I'll be dealing with that. All right.